Hello everyone, just a quick check-in. So it is May 12th here and I have finally finished Charged by Emily Bazelon. Now it's took me about a week to read this, which I was not expecting, so that's why I'm a little bit behind and I haven't really checked in with you guys about this book at all, about my progress throughout the book. I've just kind of finished it now and I decided I'm just going to wrap it up because while I was reading it I could have checked in, but I also don't want this video / it might be 2 videos depending on how I edit it to be too long for you guys and too boring, and the most exciting bit is you want to know how I found the book. So in the end I've given this 3 stars, potentially 3.5, but I realised that I gave Laurie Gottlieb's 3.5 and this book isn't as good as that book. So I enjoyed my reading experience in some parts when I read this book, but overall it was a bit more tedious than pleasurable. So I know a lot of people that judged the first round had a lot of issues with the 2 stories that she uses to illustrate her points throughout, and that is Nora's story and Kevin's story. Now, what I didn't like about the 2 stories, I didn't actually mind the 2 stories because they kind of provided a bit of narrative relief from a lot of statistics in here about different DA's offices, different district attorneys, different prosecutors across completely different counties and states in the US, which did get a little bit stat heavy and a little bit complicated for somebody who doesn't live in the US. So I quite enjoyed Kevin and Nora's stories because they provided a little bit of relief for me as a reader. However, I think the choice of the 2 stories was quite interesting. Both were charged for very different things. So Kevin was charged for possession of a gun when the police raided his friend's house, and Nora was charged for the murder of her mother when she was found by the police in her own home where her mother had been killed. So the 2 stories were drastically different. They also lived in different states, but that didn't bother me because I think that would have been a good comparison about how different states' justice systems work and compare those. But this one was a bit difficult, the actual subject matter of the charges, because it was so drastically different. Gun possession, in some instances no violence occurred, and there was a lot of discussion around whether that should be classed as a violent felony or not, or a misdemeanor and things like that. But Nora's was quite a serious crime, or she was accused of quite a serious crime, so the comparisons just didn't fit. Obviously things like the diversion programs that Kevin was in and seeing the alternative way that he got more support than Nora did was interesting, and I really enjoyed seeing how the diversion programs work in different states, but he was always going to have more opportunity to have that because he wasn't arrested on a murder charge. So I think the 2 comparisons were a little bit drastic to kind of put back to back. Well, I did really enjoy the argument of the book. So this book is quite a hot topic at the moment on Netflix. You'll see a lot of shows that deal with the American mass incarceration issue, about the issue of lower charges, things like marijuana and gun possession, and how they are classed quite drastically in other states. People are sent to prison because they can't afford bail, or they're sent to prison because they've been accused of murder or violent crimes, and then they will be incarcerated for a long time. Then DNA evidence will exonerate them, or they'll find out that the prosecution hid key evidence at the trial. Things like that has been quite a hot button at the moment. On Netflix is The Innocent Files, and this topic seems to be a bit buzzy at the moment. So I like the idea that this book, instead of focuses on kind of like the Black Lives Matter element of the police and the brutality to certain populations in the US, or just mass incarceration in general and how the prison system works, this focuses on prosecutors and their legal duties, and how a lot of the time prosecutors cannot legally be sued by individuals for, you know, getting witnesses to say false testimonies, for hiding exonerating evidence or evidence that might help the defence at trial, from, you know, kind of using dodgy police to get statements out of people, sign confessions, hiding phone records, things like that. The prosecutors cannot be sued, and there's a lot of buzz around Brady law in the US and about the idea that they should give evidence to the defence and that the defence and the prosecutor should be more united, and how somewhere along the line in the American justice system prosecutors have been given a lot of power, more power than the judge in a criminal case, how things like guilty pleas mean that so many people don't go to trial and that they are kind of bullied by the prosecution into taking a guilty plea, even innocent people. So this was a really interesting topic, but it was quite heavy on the jargon and quite heavy on stats in different states, and it did start to raise a little bit of an argument towards the end that some states are getting there, and she interviewed some people who have this reform notion, and these two people went through the system, and it's quite interesting to see when they were given support how their lives could turn out. But the argument was a little bit weak. The last 2 chapters she didn't articulate how to give this change. It was just kind of a flimsy message of, I just hope prosecutors are better in the end, and it's quite a complicated issue, and even though I've written this whole book about it, I'm not really sure where we can go. It might take a while. It was not very strong on its argument. I think this was a really good idea for a book, but it really needed a heavy overarching argument of this is how we can get there, which I didn't really feel in this book. And ultimately it was a really interesting topic, but there was a lot of things flying at you at once, and this could have been structured and done better ultimately. But I found the subject matter interesting. I didn't love my reading experience of this, and a lot of jumping between different judges in different states and different DAs and how this worked and how that didn't work, and also her language was quite difficult. She had very clunky sentences at some points, which meant I had to reread the sentence and say, hang on a minute, which argument are we on now? Are we talking about reform judges, or are we talking about the old class of judges? And it's a bit disheartening to keep reading that people keep going after prosecutors and then nothing happens, and ultimately nobody gets awarded the money when they try to sue the state, and prosecutors don't get touched. And so there's a lot of frustrating things from reading this. Some no fault of the writer, just the subject matter in general, and some were just, I think this argument could have been done in a better way. So this is a really great start for this subject matter, and if you know nothing about it, this will tell you a lot. But I think this field can be worked on a little bit better in non-fiction. Hopefully some other people will be able to create future books on this subject matter. It might be a bit more optimistic, and that there might have been a bit more change since this book was published, positively against prosecutors, and giving more power back overall to the defendant and the defence and the justice system overall, as opposed to just prosecutorial power. But hopefully somebody else can find a clearer, caved out argument that Emily has tentatively started to address, and create some more non-fiction on it that adds to this, that enhances this. So overall this is just a 3-star. So this is going underneath You Need to Talk to Someone. So we've got Underland as number 1, How to Be an Anti-Racist is number 2, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb as number 3, and Charged by Emily Bazelon as number 4. So now I have got to push the express button and get this train moving quite quickly, because we're already into the 12th of May, which is ridiculous. So I'm feeling a little bit less stressed now. I had my interview for my master's course last week on Microsoft Teams, so fingers crossed I'll know by the end of June, but at least I can put that out of my mind now. So I've got the last 2 books to read. Now I was going to pick Parkland by Dave Cullen to break that up, but I've realised that Solitary by Albert Woodfox is quite lengthy, so this is going to be 400 pages, and I think this is just under 300, so I'm going to pick this one. I know it's very similar subject matter to the one I've just read. He was incarcerated for 40 odd years and was in solitary for most of that time, so it's going to be a similar topic matter. And I'm also aware from watching a lot of people judge the first round that this was a ghost writer, so that will all be very interesting. But I've seen a lot of people really enjoyed this. Obviously it made it through, so it's got some interesting merit. I'm going to be really proactive in my judging to not compare the two, because they're similar subject matters but not exactly the same. But yeah, I'm going to get to this one as soon as possible, and then I'll check in with you see you then. Hello everyone, just another quick check-in with you guys. So since we last spoke, I have managed to finish Solitary by Albert Woodfox. So this was around 400 pages. We are now on, I think, the 22nd of May, and I need to finish the final book, which is Parkland by David Cullen, by the 30th. So it's a bit tight now getting to the deadline. But I just wanted to wrap up how I feel about this. That's why I haven't done for these last two books kind of check-in of me finishing them, because I just simply don't have time. I've been in a bit of a reading slump, and I think that's purely because I've really enjoyed reading non-fiction, but the only issue is a lot of the books that I was given in this category were about social justice and about how social justice hasn't been done in terms of some of these individuals I've read about, particularly Albert Woodfox. He spent 40 plus years in solitary confinement in the US, and this basically just takes us on a journey of that whole experience, from his first incident of being arrested to when he's in prison. He's accused of killing a prison guard, how he meets the Black Panther Party in prison and starts to learn about what they mean to him and connects with that, meets three friends, and they kind of become known as the Angola Three, and the fight to get them out of solitary, about all the petitioning that he did while he was in prison, and kind of the impact it had on his family outside, how he loses a lot of family members and he can't attend their funeral. So it literally just takes us from when he first kind of got incarcerated to in 2016 when he is free. So it is quite lengthy, and it does go into a lot of detail of that whole process. So I believe Leslie George Ghost wrote this for him, but that you can tell it's his own words and ideas in this, and she's just helped kind of edit it. So I will let him off for that. It doesn't really impact on your reading, and you're not really ever told it was a ghostwriter. In the acknowledgements, he does reference that she really helped him write this book, but it's not really addressed, and it doesn't really need to be. So this book, upon finishing it, left me with a little bit of a dilemma, because I'm giving this 3.5/4, which is very similar to Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb. So I was a little bit in the middle between these two. What I've decided is this isn't perfect, but I'm going to put it above this one. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because, I'm going to put this one down now, I think this will appeal to the wider public and the wider non-fiction readers than the other one. The other one's a little bit more anecdotal about her experiences being a therapist and then what it was like to go through therapy, whereas this, I think anybody who's interested in social justice, who hasn't also read all these other social justice books at the same time, so was kind of refreshed, isn't binge watching things on Netflix about it and wants to know more about it, this is a really great place to start. And it's a really good non-fiction for people who don't read much non-fiction to start with, because it's very easy to read. It is powerful as well because it's coming directly from him. So while I started to get fatigued towards the end of this, because it is quite lengthy, and personally in my opinion they could have slashed maybe 100 to 200 pages overall, I don't know whether that's because I've been reading a lot of social justice books and I had a bit of a non-fiction headache with that topic, but I think this will appeal on my scale to more people. They'll be able to get more out of this than the other book. I think the other book's a little bit more niche, and people who aren't interested in therapy won't pick that up, whereas this maybe, like, there's a lot of Netflix programs at the moment about subjects like this, or big films, so I feel like this has more wider appeal. I will let people know that this obviously does have a lot of violence, but this is a raw look at what it's like, and I think this was much better done than Charged, because while Charged has some overlap with this, it talks about the power that prosecutors have in the American justice system and the abuse, and how he's had to petition for so many years to be free when he was incarcerated and charged for a crime that he didn't commit. So it has a lot of overlap, but this just deals with the topic overall better, and I think it's because it has the human element. So it's his direct story, we're feeling his pain, we're really able to sympathise with this man and his experiences, whereas Charged was attempting elements of this human experience, but then with a lot of heavy jargon, and I think it will lose a lot of people, whereas this has the mass appeal. So if this sounds interesting to you, I would give it a go. I don't think it will be for everyone, but I just think overall it has more appeal than the other two books. And I think had I read this first, I might have got through it a lot quicker than the other two. I just think I kind of, by the time I've read How to Be an Anti-Racist and Charged and everything else, I've kind of just had a bit of a social justice headache, which is not great because now I'm going into Parkland by Dave Cullen, but I've been reading the prologue and I've just been reading the first chapter. And this seems really interesting because he's kind of laid out in the prologue from the very beginning, this isn't going to be about the killer. This isn't going to be a juicy real crime, what happened with this shooting. It's about these kids, and he says that this has so much hope and these kids are so fantastic, and this is much more inspirational than depressing. So I think that's going to be really good. I know a lot of people who have read Columbine, which I actually really want to read because Columbine is the shooting that I know the most about, and I don't really know a lot about Parkland. They said that that had this kind of oppressive, depressive energy to it because it was the very first, and he talks about in the prologue how he got a lot of PTSD by association, doing a lot of journalistic reporting about Columbine. So this seems a lot more informed, and he says we're not going to dwell on the actual incident, we're going to really focus in this book on the inspirational kids that have created this movement. Because I know nothing about this, I'm quite excited to learn all about the effects of that movement and maybe do a bit of research alongside a few YouTube videos and bits and bobs while I'm reading it to enhance it. So where we stand in the rankings, need to finish this one, but where we currently are is Robert Macfarlane's Underland is number 1. How to Be an Anti-Racist is number 2. Solitary by Albert Woodfox is number 3. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb is number 4. And Charged by Emily Bazelon is number 5. Now, I just have a suspicion, based on reading this book, that I think this will get in the top 3. This was the one I was most excited about in the whole collection of books. And this is just around 300 pages, so I'm going to spend the afternoon whizzing through this because I want to be able to finish it, give my thoughts to you guys, edit all this ready so that when the 30th of May comes along and I can start at the beginning of June, I can get this video out there. But I will check in with you guys when I've finished this book. See you in a bit. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my final check-in for this video. So it is the 25th of May, so I have reached target before the 30th and finished all of the quarterfinal non-fiction books. So I'm going to wrap up for you Parkland by Dave Cullen, which is the last book, which I finished last night. Oh my gosh. Sorry, my glasses are steaming up a little bit here. I absolutely loved this book. So, obviously it's about the Parkland shooting that happened in 2018 in Parkland, Florida, in Douglas High School. It's got a really long name, Marjorie Stoneleigh Douglas High School, I believe. And I didn't know anything about this particular shooting. I knew that he had written Columbine, and Columbine shooting is the one in particular I know the most about. So there is a bit of a lapse, about 19 years between when Columbine happened and this happened. But this book is kind of about how the Parkland kids have got to a stage where they are sick of all these shootings happening and nothing happens. There's no discussion around gun reform. And so they decide that they are going to get political. So in this book, they do the March for Our Lives, where they go to DC and they have a rally and a big march to protest for gun reform and protest against what's been happening. And then they also go and do a summer tour bus kind of thing where they go all over the states, especially the particularly red Republican states in the South, and have a discussion with them about gun laws. And then they try as well, around the midterms when this book is set, to try and get more young people to vote. So they have some agendas, and what's really interesting is that these kids are so young, they're only about 17 when this happened. These were survivors of the shooting, and they end up organising, getting themselves on tour buses, going to different states, meeting politicians, organising rallies, doing social media. They are just so incredibly talented, and I love that this book, Dave Cullen is a journalist, but he just uses what they do and their own words to voice this book, so it really feels like this is their experience. And I love that this book and the way that this whole situation has been dealt with is that adults allow these teenagers to be treated like adults, they don't patronise them. It was phenomenal that with everything that happened that they were able to do that. I loved how hopeful and optimistic this book is. It oozes this energy of hope and passion, and I love that you can tell Dave Cullen is very attached to these kids, and there's so many moments in this book that are very affectionate about them. There's a bit where he's trying to interview Emma and she's dancing along to music in the background, she's getting distracted by questions, but there's such a warmth about it. And the way he discusses some of the characters, like David, who's a bit more prickly and people find harder to get to know, and he says the media portray him as very angry, but that's not the experience that Dave Cullen has when he interviews him. This book is so interesting. I love that Parkland's message ends up being, first and foremost, they're not against guns in the entirety, they are for more sensible gun laws which allow for stronger background checks, and that they want guns to be safer for people of all ages and all ethnicities and colours. So I loved that towards the middle of the book they go to Chicago and they meet Brave and I've forgotten the name of the other one, which are two movements in Chicago. Young black African Americans have been creating in their community to deal with the fact that where they live in Chicago, in the poorer area of Chicago, gun violence is a real issue, and a lot of them have lost relatives due to the gun violence, and how this book isn't against school shooters, it's against the process of gun violence against young people throughout the entirety of America. So the message is really interesting and clear. I loved that they interweaved Martin Luther King's principles in here as well as part of their ethos. But this book really gave me a boost because it was so much more hopeful than the other books, and it was so inspiring to know that these young kids had taken this on and made such a difference. So I didn't know anything about the March for Our Lives before this, and it's made me want to research it, and I've got a bit on Twitter and seen what these kids have done. So this almost reads like a fiction, and then it's astounding when you realise these kids are real people who are still, you know, at the end of this book they're going to college and they're starting to learn about themselves and move on post this trauma, even though it's still with them. There's some really interesting bits in here about how PTSD works, how the adults were torn between giving them this responsibility because they were so phenomenal, they were doing such a good job, and allowing them to take a step back and to try and check in with them about their mental health so that it didn't get too bad for them. And then the midterms was really interesting. At the end it kind of goes into the results. So at first the kids kind of feel quite disappointed by that, but then the stats show that they had really worked very hard on getting young people to vote, and that had been a success. So it's really interesting because a lot of them towards the end look towards a future where they still belong to the March for Our Lives movement, and others are happy with what they've achieved and needed to go back to college or start college and learn more about themselves to figure out where they want to go with the movement. So it's really encouraged me to, after this book, to do a bit of research and find out what everybody else did post this book. I love Dave Cullen's writing in this. So it's not as a lyrical, say, as Underland, because Underland was a little bit different. That was trying to teach you about the beauty of the landscape, but his writing is phenomenal. I love the way he broke up paragraphs, so it almost looked like, because of the bold font, that we were going on to a different topic, and then we did have numbered chapters there, like 4, and they were really accessible to read on the page. So the experience flew by. This was 311 pages, and I just couldn't really put this down. It was lovely because the book was trying to be impartial. He was almost trying to filter everything through how he experienced the kids, where they met up, what they said, what they tweeted, how they told him about things. But his unresounding affection and love for them seep through in this book, the way he talks about them, the energy that they bring to the room. So this was just such a pleasant reading experience, considering I knew it was going to be a very difficult topic. I love how the shooter's not mentioned, and it's all about these kids and this real exciting new chapter for young people in politics in America, especially since we are now living in the Trump administration era, which is really scary for a lot of young Americans. I mean, I'm not personally because I live in the UK, but I mean, people here in the UK are very worried about Trump and his impact on America, and I'm someone who studied a lot of American history, and I'm really interested in American culture. And I find the Trump administration has really affected America. I think Obama, he wasn't exactly without his faults, but he created a bit of hope for the really difficult race relationship in America. And I think Trump has really set that back with how he is about immigration laws and how he is about gun reform laws and how he is about the social and criminal justice system. So this gave me a lot of hope, and it was just fantastic. It's made me want to go and order Columbine, because that was the one that I had on my radar more than Parkland, because I didn't know that much about it. And I have seen on Goodreads, and he mentions in the acknowledgements that he's got another book out about 2 gay soldiers, and it's coming out this year, I believe, so definitely going to be getting that as well. I think I might have found a new favourite non-fiction author. So I gave this between 4.5 and 5, I think, at the moment. I'm leaning towards 5 stars. Absolutely love this book. So yeah, that's Parkland by Dave Cullen. Loved it. So that leaves us with the final rankings of number 1 is Parkland by Dave Cullen. Number 2 is Underland by Robert Macfarlane. Number 3 is How to Be an Antiracist by Ibram X. Kendi. Number 4 is Solitary by Albert Woodfox. Number 5 is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb. And number 6 is Charged by Emily Bazelon. So I'm actually really happy with where these are all sitting in the rankings now. These to me are just hide my face there. These 3 are the very best books, I think, to come out of this category. Just the way they're written, their message, how engaging they are. All of them have an underlying argument, so I think they tick that box of they are a purposeful non-fiction. The arguments were clear, they were written well, they were engaging. They were all topics I didn't necessarily know about before going in, and they've been really informative on the subject that they chose to write the book about and the purpose of the book. And the writing style, the intelligence, the way they were constructed was, in my personal opinion, at higher level than the other 3 books. So I would be over the moon if these 3 books got into the next category, because they really, in my opinion, were the best of this category. So thank you for sticking with me and watching this whole vlog. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new video.